thank you for joining me on my very first YouTube video. So please don't be too harsh. The reason why I started this channel is because I get so many questions on my Instagram account about what products I use and how to use them. So I really want to create content to help you out. So if you have a recommendation for a video that you'd like to see me make, then please drop it in the comments below, and I'm going to do my best to make videos based on what you guys want to see. Today I'm going to be talking about Chameleon Markers and Chameleon Color Top Markers. I'm going to be talking about what they are, how to use them together, and then toward the end of the video I'm going to drop 3 tips on how to create a smooth and flawless gradient. And I know that's one of the biggest issues that starters have using the Chameleon markers. So please stay tuned and I'm going to help you out. So Chameleon markers are alcohol-based markers and they are refillable, and the inks, the nibs can also be replaced. So they have 2 sides. They have more of like a brush tip and then also a bullet nib. There we go. And they also have a colorless blender on them as well. And then these over here are called color top markers. So these are separate, but they're used in conjunction with a regular Chameleon marker. So I'll show you how to do that later on. Now, also to start out, the kind of paper that I prefer using is this Canson XL mixed media paper. It's a 98 pound weight and it's thicker so the ink doesn't bleed through them. That's the kind of paper that I typically use, and I get that question a lot, so that should help. Each pen by themselves can create depth and dimension, and the way that you do that to create multiple different colors is to take the colorless blender and place it on top. And you want to place it up and down so that gravity will transfer the colorless blender ink onto the colored side. So basically taking away some of the color to create the gradient. And now how long you hold it on there will depend on how long it takes for the gradient to change. So it starts out light. Now I'll show it up close. So I put the colorless blender on top, just like that, but I'm going to have to hold it. I have to hold it vertical so that the ink transfers. And then now I hear this a lot, that it's hard to get a really smooth gradient, and there are some ways to help with that. First is to overlap a bit. So I'm overlapping it a little bit more because I did notice that on the first 2 letters it looked really streaky. But if you overlap, it helps to create a smoother gradient. If you can see the orange one versus the first 2, it's a lot smoother. So for the green one, I didn't put the colorless blender nib on as long as I did for the yellow one, so you can tell that the gradient starts right away, whereas over here, it takes a really long time for the yellow to show up. Now on this one, I'm going to use the bullet nib. To be honest, I don't really use the bullet nib very often, but we'll see how it works. Now, I don't know if the ink just transferred faster onto the bullet nib, but that one hardly changed color, so I think I may have held it on there for too long, but this time I didn't hold it on as long, so let's see how this one turns out. This is the bullet nib as well. The reason why I don't like the bullet nib as much is because it doesn't cover as much surface area as the other nib. And I'm usually doing bigger pieces too, so I prefer the other nib. So now let's talk about the color top markers. Like I said, you can't buy these and use them just by themselves. They have to be used in conjunction with a regular Chameleon marker. So basically what the color tops do are to create color to color blends. They create seamless color blends, and you can achieve different tonal gradients. So it's very similar to how you use the colorless blender on the Chameleon marker, except you put the color top marker on top of the regular marker. And then basically the red ink will transfer down onto the orange, and how long you leave it on there will depend on how long it takes for the gradient to happen. So I'll take that off. And it does take some experimenting and figuring out how long you should leave it on to achieve a good gradient. And it really depends on, too, the size of your work. So these are really small and thin letters that I'm doing, but sometimes I do bigger pieces. So if I were to do something that had these bigger rectangles, I would have to leave the color top marker on the regular marker longer so that it transfers more of that ink onto the regular marker to create the gradient. I mean, the goal is always to try to create the gradient in the middle if that's the look that I'm going for, but sometimes I do a gradient where it would be, let's say, red, orange, and then red again. So in that case, what I would do is I would put the red marker on top. And again, you just have to kind of work with the timing to figure out what works best. And then again, overlap it a little bit so that you don't get the streakiness. So now the orange is starting to come out. So I'll stop there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on again. Just for a little bit. I'm going to turn the paper so that it's easier. And the orange is coming back. And then have the orange meet in the middle. So see, it's not really perfect because the orange is a little bit lower, but I mean, you get the picture that you can do a red, orange, red gradient too. I will say this as a tip too, when you go from a lighter color to a darker color, like this yellow to green, I feel like it takes a lot longer for the color to fully transfer on there to make sure that you don't get any streaks of green in the beginning or any streaks of the darker color. So just test it out with the lighter, from the lighter color to the darker color to see what works for you. For me, it always works to keep it on a little bit longer so that the yellow actually shows up. Because even then you can still see a hint of green in there, which if that's the look you're going for, then that's perfect. But sometimes I like it to be totally yellow starting out, so you really get the effect of going from yellow to green. I mean, it's not bad, if you can see. It's not bad. You can see hints of green, but you just have to hold it on there for a little bit longer with the lighter colors. Also, a little trick I have is if you feel like the color isn't coming up, then I kind of color in one spot for a long time to wait for the color to come out. Because basically what you're doing is you're just rubbing off the colored ink that you transferred onto there. So if you go back and forth in one spot for a little while to kind of wait for that, let's say the purple ink to come off, then the pink ink will eventually show up. You just have to kind of go back and forth to let some of that purple ink come off. Also with this, how I got the black lines is I actually lettered this on my iPad in the Procreate app, and then I printed it onto mixed media paper. And that's how I have this. But what I also do is I will use a black paint marker to draw something or write something and let the paint marker dry, and then you can color on the inside and there won't be any bleeding, or the black marker won't come up or anything like that. One mistake I make too, besides coloring outside of the lines, is not leaving the color top on long enough so it's hard to see the gradient. So I'm going to talk about 3 ways to achieve the perfect gradient. I'm going to use purple and pink. Those are 2 of my favorite colors. So I think they also blend really well together. So, okay, if I can get that lid off. Again, holding it vertically to transfer the purple ink onto the pink ink. So you want to look at the angle of the pen and how I'm holding it. You're not holding it straight up and down. You're not holding it completely parallel to your surface. You're going to hold it at about a 45-degree angle. And also, you want to look at the pressure of the nib. Now, I'm pushing very lightly. If I were to push hard, it becomes more streaky, if you could see those streaks. And I know I'm not going perfectly in the rectangle, but if you can see, that's me pushing hard. And it leaves a lot of streaks, purple streaks. So I'm going to do it again, but pushing lightly. And the reason why you don't want to push hard is because what happens is you're pushing the pink ink down, but you're also pushing just the very tip of that purple ink. So that's why it's getting an uneven gradient. So here I'm going to push soft. So I'm not pushing too hard. And I'm giving soft, gentle pressure. So there is still a little bit of streakiness there, but with the last tip, hopefully we can fix that streakiness. So it's getting better. So I'm going to do it again. Now my last tip that I have is to almost backtrack a little bit. So if you notice that it starts getting streaky, basically don't put so much distance between your strokes. And also when you start to see that there's a little bit of streakiness, kind of go back over that area again with your marker. So here you could see the pink is starting to come out. So I'm going to keep my strokes closer together. And I see a little bit of streakiness, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to go kind of back over that area. Again, with gentle pressure, not pushing too hard. And it is alcohol ink, so it does blend a little bit better. So here you can see that was our first one that we did with way too much pressure. That was our second one we did with lighter pressure, but we didn't backtrack. And then our third one, we did light pressure and we backtracked, and that created a much smoother gradient. Okay, so let's do this again closer up so you guys can see. So we're going to start 45-degree angle, light pressure, and then once you start to see the pink, then you can backtrack and then take a little bit smaller strokes. So I'm starting to see the pink. So I'm kind of going back over those areas that I already did. And that's how you achieve a smoother gradient. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please like the video if you liked it and comment below about other content that you would like to see, and I'd be happy to make future videos based on what you guys want to see. Thanks for joining, and I hope to see you on my next video.